Hey guys, Tyler here. More recently, I saw the new special for Rocko's Modern Life, and before I saw the special, I was really excited to see it. Mostly because it seemed as though that a lot of the stuff that I grew up on are making a comeback for Netflix. Like, I know for a fact that when I was a kid, I grew up on shows like Rocko, I grew up on shows like Rugrats, I grew up on shows like Doug and Angry Beavers and these other kind of shows. And so basically, when I heard the news that Rocko's Modern Life was making a comeback for Netflix, I was really excited to see it. I also saw that special for Invader Zim, and that special was also very fantastic. However, for that Invader Zim special, I'm going to talk about it in a separate video because this video obviously is all about Rocko's Modern Life. I forgot the name of the special, unfortunately. However, it was fantastic. I really enjoyed the special. Like essentially in the past, like of course, like they used to have pencil and paper to animate the specials and TV shows of the past. And of course to see Rocko Modern Life again, but this time in a much more updated art style, excuse me. It was fantastic, and I also thought that it was really funny throughout. Now, this whole entire controversy about like Rocko's Modern Life is really curious, mostly because it seems as though, like in the past, like Rocko's Modern Life used to have a lot of themes that were really adult that deal with the real world. And essentially, like they had like dirty jokes, and it's not just Rocko's Modern Life that had these kind of dirty jokes in the shows. Essentially, there was like shows like Rem and Skimpy and so on that used to have that kind of dirty jokes that they had in the shows. But essentially, the controversy for Rocko's Modern Life for the new TV special is the fact that there's an LGBT character that is presented in the show. And I don't think it's actually a bad thing that they had the LGBT character in the show. And the main reason why I say this is because honestly, I felt it was fantastic. It was really fantastic. Essentially, the theme about the show that I saw in the special is that people need to love and to accept other people, and also to accept change when you need to accept change. And honestly, I thought that the whole entire idea of presenting people like the LGBT character as they are right now in that video was really good because essentially, like, I think this is a really important topic in this day and age. Mostly because in the past, like, of course, many gay people, they couldn't come out in the closet. They didn't really have these sort of pride parades. Like, essentially, they were really, really stuck, like, in the closet to come out in the past. And now this has changed. Like, basically, people are now more out about who they are. And they also have, of course, like, gay marriage. And so I think it's really important that if they were to present something like this in a TV show, that they should do it in a very respectful way. And sure enough, I thought that, like, of course, the new special did it in a really respectful way that did not feel like it was shoved down my throat. Because essentially, I think, like, for any parent, I cannot possibly imagine, like, basically hearing the news that your son or your daughter is like a transgender person or a bisexual person or, whatever. And I think it's really good to show people, to show parents, like, hey, it's perfectly fine for your kid to come out this way. And so that's why, it's very fine to, have whatever kid that you have. And so I like the idea that the show had a theme about love and acceptance. And I thought it was very done in a very tasteful way. I don't know why there are so many people, like specifically like No Bullshit and these other channels, who go after like the show because it has like any sort of LGBT anything. Like I don't think that having an LGBT character by itself is forcing belief system. It's not anything political. Like I remember a while back, like basically there was a controversy for like The Last of Us because basically in The Last of Us Part 2, they had a trailer where basically there was like two lesbians kissing. And I didn't really care about it because basically it was like all about nothing. And there were like some people who were just complaining about that. I was like, oh, are you kidding, dude? Like basically, like I don't really care if there's like any sort of LGBT characters in shows or movies. Like I saw shows like Game of Thrones. I saw shows like What was it? Let's see. Game of Thrones. What else? I forgot the other show, but basically I seen characters where basically they were gay and they were just fine. Like, I think it's perfectly fine for people to have characters like these. Because essentially, like, art reflects reality and reality reflects art. And so I think by having that kind of, like, these kind of characters in the show is perfectly fine. Of course, like, the main criticism of the shows nowadays is that basically, like, there are characters that are shoehorned for the sake of diversity's sake, because sometimes they use characters that are pre-established to make the characters into X, Y, or Z. However, if it's like an original character who happens to be gay, who happens to be bisexual or transgender, I don't see the problem. I really don't see the problem. I really honestly don't see the problem. Also, like the fact that the LGBT character was in the show was very clever because essentially, like, the character was like the daughter of like Mr. Bighead, and Mr. Bighead happens to be a frog. And there's like some sort of studies that show that sometimes, of course, frogs change their gender. And so I thought it was a very funny joke on that end too, because it actually is based upon biology. So go figure. It's funny, and it also has representation. So whoop-de-doo. Whoop-de-whoop-de-doo. But anyway, like, I thought the show was really good. And also, there's like a very interesting part, like towards like the end of the show, where basically there was like, of course, this cloud talking to like Rocko and the people, and essentially they were talking about this idea of change and how sometimes change could be good. It's not sometimes in the show, but it's like how change could be good, period. And personally, I think change could be good depending on the context. Like, of course, in the past, like, basically for telephones, like, there was no such thing as cell phones. Like, essentially the cell phones that we did had, like during the 80s and the 90s, were these big phones that were really black and really heavy for cars. And then they changed that to much more smaller stuff. And of course, phones nowadays have internet. And so I think that phones actually change for the better. However, the side effect of phones changing for the better is that people no longer talk to people in public. They no longer talk to people like publicly. They don't even talk to their own parents or like their brothers or sisters. Essentially, we're becoming much more antisocial because of this kind of change. And also, of course, the change in college campuses. Like, of course, in the past, like, college campuses, despite the massive debt, used to be a place for intellectual rigor or something like that, right? But nowadays, like, college campuses are just there to just make sure that people don't have hurt feelings, and of course, cancel culture. And so I think that colleges actually changed for like the worse. And of course, there's like the whole entire issue about mass reproduction of course, food. And I think, like, of course, it was much more harder for, like, of course, for people to mass produce food for the population. And now it's much more easier. And so I think that kind of change is good. But on a side effect, like, sometimes there's, like, issues like pollution and stuff. And so there's, like, some sort of drawbacks to some sort of change something. And of course, the issue about women's rights and also minority rights. Like, of course, I do believe that it's really awesome that women and, of course, like, minorities can vote. And so that was actually changed for the better. So depending on the context, I do think that some change could be good, but some change are, like, really bad. And sometimes you need people to say, hold up, that kind of change is a little bit too far. So let's go back a little notch right there because it's, like, too much change. And so I think change is, like, in the middle. Like, there are some changes that are good, but there are some changes that we should not accept and just hold, like, to go back to, not change that. But anyway, the special was really fine. I thought it was funny. And I thought, like, the representation was not forced. It's good to have an LGBT character that actually, have people to think about, how to treat their own kid. And I think it's really important to have that kind of message to love a person regardless of their identification or orientation. But what do you guys think? Tell me in the comment section down below. And I'll talk to you guys next time.